Well, we have a different type of podcast tonight.
Yes.
We're going to talk about parenting from all of our wealth of experience.
We are the gurus
The
of
gurus.
parenting.
We're not that much of a gurus, but what we are is we've just passed through a year.
We survived.
We did
so
survive.
that was good.
And no one died.
And she survived too. That's like also good.
Very good.
Yes.
So what we're going to talk about is our experience with parenting, and hopefully some of it is helpful for you. And if it's not, then you'll just waste like 30 minutes of your day, which we all waste time anyway, so it won't really matter that much.
Yeah, we're kind of just talking about like just some of the things that we've learned over this last year. It's been so not what we expected, I feel like. There have been some parts that were definitely what we expected, but the majority of it was not.
I think there's general expectations you have, and then there's specific expectations, and most of the specific expectations were crushed. Like the things like parenting is going to be hard. That's true. That's a very general expectation. It's about like, our baby's going to be the best baby ever. Like, no, crushed. Like 100%. So.
Not character-wise. We do love her.
She's not the best character-wise either. I don't know what you're about to talk about.
I mean, she's a little intense sometimes. That's going to serve her well. We're not going to squash that as much as we're going to want to. Mm-hmm. Okay, You should go first. You should say your first one.
I feel like you're the one that's had to work the hardest for being a parent, so I feel like you should go first.
I mean, that's probably true. My number one is the newborn stage is terrible. I just feel like people need to know that that's okay, that you can just survive the newborn stage. And as long as they are living and you are living and you're still married at the end of it, then that's great. Everyone, like, people have told me it's different with additional children too, because like you love the snuggly part of it.
Yeah, we're pretty much only talking about first kids.
Yeah, this is like, we are probably going to delete this in like 10 years because
probably.
we'll
be like, wow, that was all terrible advice.
We have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I never realized how little time I spent around a true newborn, because people don't go anywhere with those. They hide.
Yeah. What do you consider a newborn?
It's under 12 weeks.
Under 12 weeks.
Yeah. And it's just so, like, you don't get any positive feedback from them. You're so tired. And it's just this whole change of your entire life. And so I had anticipated starting at like probably, in my mind, 3 months old was like kind of the cognitive ability that I thought we would be starting at, just because I had no idea what I was doing. And so she came out and she was a tiny potato and just cried. And so if you hate the newborn stage, that's okay. You can just survive it. It's the shortest one. So I feel like I'd almost be a little sad to be like, that was the best 12
Because some
weeks.
people really like it.
Some
and
people
if you're
love
one of those
it.
people that really loves the newborn
God bless
stage,
you.
that's wonderful.
You should become a postpartum doula. Just take all of the babies.
Yeah. There is something very true, though, about how hard the newborn stage is, just because there's so little feedback. And I want to say this, too. If you, like, have trouble bonding with your kid during the newborn phase, like, you're not alone in that. Mm-hmm. So don't, like, freak out about, like, oh, I don't have all of these magical feelings that I'm supposed to have.
Oh, my gosh. I didn't have any of those. I was so tired until 3 months. Was it 3 months that I actually started?
I think it was, like 2 months is when things started turning for the better.
Yeah, I started, like, actually being like, oh, this is my baby. Like, this is not just a baby that was airdropped into our home. This is, like, my personal baby, which was super weird. Because, I mean, a lot of people warned me that that could happen. And so I wasn't super concerned about it. But you do feel a little bit bad when you're like, I don't know that I like you so much.
Yeah. And
but that grows.
Our daughter, she came very quickly, but also it made a very, like, painful delivery. And I know for me, like, as a dad, I was kind of like torn between these two things of like, I'm supposed to love you, but I'm also upset that you hurt the person that I care about. So like that
That's
was
such
kind
an
of a
interesting guy
kind of a
thing.
struggle for a little bit of like, you just inflicted so much pain on my spouse.
It's true.
But you're also my child, so I love you, even though I don't like what you just did.
Yeah, for the first several months, I loved her out of principle. And sometimes you just have to do that. And then after that, it was like, it just got more and more gushy,
Yeah.
which was great.
Yeah. Be ready for that roller coaster, guys. There's definitely a like, oh my gosh, what is happening? That goes on with your wife's emotions. You're like, wow,
That's not true
where
at
are
all.
we at this roller
It's
coaster
incorrect. I was perfectly normal and sane.
But that has nothing to do with my advice.
Okay.
So my advice is that the first kid is all about practice. And the more that you treat things like practice, the better off you're going to be. If you get really frustrated because things aren't working out the first time that you try something with a kid, like it's going to be incredibly toxic. Like you just have to treat everything like practice. Like we are practicing feeding. We're practicing going to bed. We're practicing taking naps. We're practicing changing diapers. Like everything's practice. And when you do practice, you don't expect perfection, right? So, but you're practicing in the hopes that things are going to get better. And so with Quetzal, one of the big things that we did was this super awesome no cry sleep training that was incredibly valuable.
It's called Taking Care of Babies. They don't sponsor us, but if they wanted to, we'd take your money because we would give you all of ours.
Wow. Anyway, I don't know about giving them all of my money.
It was worth it.
Yeah, so my point is that they had steps. And we started doing these sleep training steps with Quetzal when she was like 4 or 5 weeks old. And at that point, like they don't get a lot, but you can start practicing the steps. And it's really frustrating not having a kid sleeping. But when you are thinking about it from the standpoint of like, this is practice to help them learn the skills to be able to put themselves to sleep. This is practice to learn the ability to be able to wait for an extra 10 minutes before they feel like they need food. Mm-hmm. Like those things are really critical because it changes your frame of mind and it allows you to have grace for the process instead of being really frustrated that things aren't working as quickly as you want them to. And you're really tired, so you want things to work very quickly.
Really tired.
But then just with everything, like you're constantly practicing things. We brainstorm all the time. We're like, Quetzal's in a new phase. What are we going to do? Mm-hmm. Like she's doing this new behavior. And you just got to practice. You're like, okay, well, this is the plan. And we'll see how well it works for 3 days. And if it's not working, then we'll change the plan. And so you're practicing things constantly. You can't be frustrated at yourself and you can't be frustrated at the kid just because they're not perfect and you're not perfect on the first time that you're trying to execute a plan.
Yes, definitely. You're much better at that than I am because I am very much in my brain. If it's like going badly now, I'm like projecting to like in 6 months when I haven't slept for more than 3 hours and it just goes very badly. So it's super important. And again, I want to emphasize it was a no cry newborn sleep thingy.
Yeah.
So don't comment at us on that.
Yeah, it literally like
It's
takes
great.
5 minutes max to like step through all of the things.
I know.
If they just need to eat. So it's like,
yeah,
it's one of those things where
we didn't let her scream in her bed.
actively engaging with them. Yeah. So yeah.
Don't be mean to us.
Yeah. I'm done.
Let's see. My second one you kind of took, but you are going to need therapy.
Wow.
And I say that to say this might be mostly like a mom thing if you like spend the most time around the baby. There are going to be a lot of things that you thought that you had under control, that you realize that you just are good at faking things around adults.
So give an example.
So like you get frustrated at a newborn. You get so angry because they don't do things that are very normal for them not to do. And so you have to kind of work through the fact that, like, I am so angry at something that is so innocent and doing nothing maliciously.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of, like, sort through all of those things, or, like, figuring out, like, I didn't think I got super overstimulated with, like, noises or with touching or any, well, I'm not a very touchy person, but with noises. And I can get super overstimulated with her, especially if she's going through a screamy phase, and then I will just lose my mind. And you're like, oh, that was kind of unreasonable for like a grown adult to be so angry at a small child who literally just only knows how to scream. Like, she didn't know any words when she was screaming. So there's just so many things that you have to anticipate. I am going to have to work through things that I thought I had already figured out.
Yeah.
Because it's just going to be a different level of figuring that out.
Because we all have issues. And a lot of those issues we've worked through, which is great. Mm-hmm. But then with kids, you get to rework through those things because you're like, oh, I have like ways of covering up anger issues.
My bad behaviors.
I have ways of covering up like withdrawing from problems, or I have ways of covering up like checking out, or any of those things. But then it turns out that like when you can't escape the problem, those issues come back up.
Totally.
Because they're how you respond to stressful situations. So that is a great one.
Yes.
This is my next piece of advice, is that everyone does things a little bit differently.
You are going to figure that out.
You're going to figure that out. Like take people's advice with a grain of salt. Like, listen to what people have to say, because they do have
Sometimes
really good
it's
things
helpful
to say. But everybody does things a little bit differently, and you need to learn how to adapt things to your own parenting style, to your own like personality, and to the baby's personality. And sometimes just ignore bad advice. Like, because something that worked for somebody else doesn't mean that it's going to work for your kid.
Totally.
So that's why you've constantly got to be like reinventing how to do things. You're like, okay, what's good? What's bad? Like, how do I combine things? What are the principles here? And how am I going to apply that? But it's different for everybody, because every baby is unique, and every set of parents is unique. So don't feel pressure that you're not doing things right if you're taking somebody's advice and you're getting a different outcome. Like, you have to adapt. You have to do things differently, and you have to be willing to do things differently. And you need to be gracious to people that are like, oh, well, all you need to do is just give them liquor or whatever. Like, maybe not that one, but but my point is,
shot. I don't know.
I mean, there's people that are like, if you put bourbon on their gums when they're teething,
I feel like it's probably better for them than most of the teething stuff.
Yeah, so there's different advice that people give, right? But realistically, you've got to figure out for yourself, like, how am I going to apply this, and what's it going to be? Because like what your parents did is not going to work exactly for your kids.
Yeah, that's like another additional like little side note. Our parents are really great. Like, they really respect our differences in how we're raising our kids, but you may have to have some very serious conversations with your parents, and that might have to start pretty young, and that is super okay to have. Like, we had a lot of preemptive conversations with people, even when it came to like, we don't want anybody in the delivery room. Like, that was my mom was in the delivery room with both of my sisters, and it was great, and I just knew that I didn't want anyone else there. And so instead of it like getting to like, I'm 37 weeks, we're like a couple weeks away from having the baby, and my mom's packing her bags, getting ready to go to the hospital. Like, we just had a conversation like halfway through the pregnancy. And it was like, if I change my mind, I will call you. And that made it so that it was so much easier. And I feel like that's been something that we've tried to do pretty consistently.
Yeah.
And with parents that are less accommodating, you may have to have more intense conversations.
Yep.
And sometimes you have to pick your battles because, like, am I really going to get angry that my parent gave a kid an ice cream sandwich or that there's like a TV running in the background? Like, you have to be like, these things are not big deals unless it's like allergies or something like that.
Yeah.
But have those conversations early and often. And I don't know, we've never talked about this, but in my opinion, it like should be the child of that parent that like really addresses it if it's an actual issue.
Typically that goes better that way.
Yeah. Like, if you're just bringing it up, I can, like, talk to your parents about whatever and
Yeah.
be like, we don't do this thing. And they're like, cool, whatever. But if it were to be, like, a consistent issue, it should be the child of that parent, not like you feeling like you're beating against your in-laws' heads.
I will say, as a guy, the time that changes is when there's a, like, when it's necessary to protect your wife. Like, because there are some parents or relatives that are so, I don't want to say abusive because I feel like that word gets overused so much, but they're just hard. They're abrasive, they're bossy, they're naggy, like whatever other thing. And like there comes a point where as the husband, you need to step in and just say, you're not allowed to talk to my wife like that.
Especially
I don't
if
care
your
if
wife
she was
is
your daughter.
more,
I
yeah.
don't care if she was your niece. She's my wife now. And so you need to back off, like, because you're not allowed to talk to her that
Yeah.
way.
Especially if, like, you're married to somebody who is less, tends to be more peacekeeping or pushover. Which we don't
even
generally
then-
have that problem.
But even then, as a husband, part of your responsibility is to step in.
It's true.
So, like, it doesn't matter if your wife is good at fighting. Like, there's a point where you're supposed to step in, not just let her fight all the time by herself.
That's true. Wait, was that yours?
Yeah, I just finished my second one.
Your second one? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm going to do something very practical, and I am a very type B person who was raised by a very type A person, so I have a lot of type A personality traits that are just, like, nurtured into me. And so cleaning is going to look completely different, and if it doesn't, you're going to die. Number one, if you don't clean anything consistently in your house until your baby is 6 months old, that, from an anecdotal friend of mine, I would say that is normal. Because I don't think I cleaned anything really consistently until she was like 6 months old. And I had this list of things that I wanted to get done every single week. And then I wouldn't even do a quarter of them every single week. And so instead of the floors getting mopped once or twice a week, it was happening like once every like 2 months or something because I just wasn't able to do everything on the list. And I pared everything down, and I do like 2 to 4, maybe. Mostly like 2 big cleaning things a week where it's like mopping all the floors or cleaning a bathroom or something like that. And if a bathroom gets cleaned every other week, like that's so much better than never getting it cleaned and me hating everything.
Yeah. And I will say this because that's very similar to one of my points. So I'm going to throw this out there as well, is that there's some things that need to be done daily and a lot of other things can wait. And so you just need to be able to prioritize. Like we had to bottle feed Ketzel for most of her
Which is a
feedings.
sin, just in
Yeah,
case you're
you know,
worried.
terrible. Anyway, so my point with that is that there's a limited number of bottles. And so the bottles have to be washed every single day. And I'll say this from the guy's perspective, is that, like, it is so much more difficult on your wife to raise a kid than it is on you as the guy to raise a kid, especially if they stay at home. So if
I
you're
don't know.
the,
I feel
if
like
you're
it might be harder to do working too.
Yeah, but from the standpoint of
Maybe mentally.
if you're the one that is the stay-at-home parent, like as a guy, if you're the stay-at-home parent and you're just formula feeding your kid or whatever other thing like that, like I could see how you might be the one that's in a position where you're like the primary caretaker and therefore you're in a little bit harder of a spot. But what I'm talking about is that if your wife is the main one that's taking care of the kid, breastfeeding, changing diapers, doing all of that stuff with them for the majority of the time throughout the day, etc. Like as the man, what you need to do is make sure those things are done that need to be done on a daily basis, not nag your wife about those things that need to be done on a daily basis. So even before we had Ketzel, I was trying to do the dishes every single night, like before we went to bed. And I don't always do them every single night, even now that Ketzel is here. But that's just one thing where it's like, okay, bottles have to be done, therefore I'm going to do bottles. Like I'm going to make sure that those are done every single night. And even when we were hand washing the bottles, like I was making sure
Which
that
is a
those were done
terrible idea.
every single night. And it's just like that's part of it being a team. Like you're a team raising this kid together, and so be a team player. You know, it's not your job to point out everything that's not being done properly. It's your job to come and partner with your wife. And so if you're noticing that she's drowning, guess what? That means that you're called to help her get her head above water, you know?
Drown a little bit more yourself.
Yeah, drown a little bit more yourself. And it's hard. Everyone's tired. Everyone's exhausted.
Except for the baby who takes 2 to 4 naps a day.
Even they can be exhausted.
Yeah, that's true.
Because
How?
they're not sleeping through the whole night.
rude.
They're like, I'm up. Why am I up?
So rude.
Anyway. So be the one that fills the gap. Don't be the one that is giving your wife unrealistic expectations of like, these are my expectations for you. I still want to come home and have dinner ready, and I still want to come home and have all the toys picked up, and I still want to come home, and like, it's not going to happen. That just makes you a jerk. It literally makes you selfish and a terrible human being. So don't be that guy. Get off of your high horse, humble yourself, serve your wife.
Yeah, I think that was something that, because you would try to do the dishes pretty often, but I think that I can't remember how old Ketzel was when you specifically, like, we made that your job, essentially. And that, I feel like, made our evenings go so much smoother because it wasn't us trying to figure out, like me just being like, look at this disaster of our house. And then you asking me every night, like, what do you need me to do? It was like, you would do the dishes, I would clean the house up, and like, we just knew what we were supposed to do. So it wasn't me just being like, anything, pick anything. I
Yeah.
don't know. Because you're so tired at the end of the night. I think that really helped me. And to be able to like do dishes if I can during the day, but be able to prioritize other things because
Yeah.
I knew it would get done.
Yep. And you just really have to think about it from the standpoint of like, what has to get done on a daily basis and what can wait. Because if it's something that can wait, then just let it wait, like, until you have the bandwidth to do it. But if it's something that needs to be done on the daily, then you need to work together as a team to make sure that that gets done.
Yes.
Because otherwise it perpetuates into this big problem, because then you're like hand washing all of these bottles like before you can feed the baby.
Yeah,
and
right
the baby's
before, as they're
screaming and crying
screaming.
at you because they are
Bad
hungry.
plan.
So
Rookie mistake.
rookie mistake. So much better just do them every night or whatever so that they're clean and ready to go.
Yes.
So that was my number 3.
Oh, that was yours?
Yeah, I just
I'm on number
piggybacked
5.
right after. What?
Yeah, because
Wow.
you stole one of mine. So you do another one.
Okay. I will do another one. Be present. It's super easy with smartphones to be really checked out. And and like there's a level of like rejuvenation and all of that kind of stuff, but especially when they're tiny infant beings, like it is so easy to just use your cell phone to check out instead of actually being present with them. because they're only going to be so big for so long. And something that we realized, because of her mom actually, that we would have never noticed, I think, was the fact that she was getting bored. Like as a 4-week old.
Yeah, I was like,
she
4
was getting bored.
weeks. I was like, how is it possible? You do nothing. Like,
Exactly.
You can't do anything.
But when you're checked out into your cell phone land or into podcast land or into like TV land or Netflix land or Instagram land, you don't notice a lot of those things. And you also miss the joy of it because at that point, your kid just becomes a burden. And there's something really like therapeutic and bonding to just looking at the face of a sleeping baby for like 10 minutes. Like, and just focusing on that. Like, it helps you not be as frustrated with them because you're like, you are so cute. You are so precious. You are so innocent. But if you're just playing video games all of the time, like you are missing all of those opportunities. So I'm not saying that you have to cut it completely out of your life and that it doesn't have a place and that you don't need to recharge from time to time.
Yeah, we used our phones a fair bit during the like newborn stage.
Yeah, but that was something that I like definitely had to repent of. I just realized like, wow, I am doing this perpetually. Like I am trying to check out so that I don't have to deal with this like constant problem and trying to like rejuvenate by using my phone, which is a really ineffective way to rejuvenate, which I've known my entire life. But somehow like you still keep believing the lie that you're going to feel really refreshed by spending 6 hours on your phone. Mm-hmm. Like just not true. So, but like I said, there is a place for it sometimes. So I'm not advocating like, you know, you throw your phone away as soon as the kid gets here. I'm just saying, be careful. Like you want to be present. So engage, be present. And like I said, like we would have never noticed that Ketzel was bored. And that's the reason that she was getting antsy and like fussy and all of that kind of stuff. And her mom was like, yeah, you got to set up different stations and like move them around.
My mom has 8 kids. So she has done this a time or two.
And she was so much happier.
And she was like, way happier.
She would just basically look at a toy for 15 minutes and then we'd move her to look at a different toy for another 15 minutes and then move her to look at a different toy for another 15 minutes.
She just wanted to drool
and then she would go down for a nap. Like
she just wanted to drool in different parts of our house.
So all of that stuff is really important. Like, because then too, you engage with them as far as like tummy time is concerned and just so many of the developmental things that are really important that otherwise you can just be like, I don't want to hear you scream for 30 seconds while I put you on your tummy. Mm-hmm. Like, but it's super important for them.
Yeah. Okay, my last one, because we need to wrap up, is I think every single month we have said that it was our favorite month. Like, I think every month that progresses and every stage that she has gotten to in like the first 12 months, especially starting at 3 months and then especially when she hit 9 months, we were like, this is just the best one. And we have kept thinking that every time. And I think number one, just as people, we think these stages are more fun, like with her being super interactive. She's so spicy. She is so sassy. Yeah. And she has just such personality at that. And at that 9-month stage, you really start seeing their intentional personality. But I think that mindset is also really helping us to take the hard things as like a part of who she is and not just solely focus on those things and to really enjoy the other parts. Yeah. Because she is so funny. While she's being spicy.
Yes. This is true. My last one is just that no phase lasts forever, but every phase will build on the next. And this is what I mean. There is a phase where the baby is not sleeping at all. That phase will not last forever.
Praise God.
So have hope that phase will not last forever because it's really easy to start to get into the mentality of like, this problem that I'm dealing with this week is going to be the problem that I'm dealing with until they move out of the house. And like, that's just not true. Yeah, that is not true. And when your mind starts going to that place of like, this is going to be a forever problem, it gets really hard to deal with it patiently because you start to panic in that moment.
Yeah.
So no phase lasts forever. There's no sleep regression phase that lasts forever. There's no spitting up phase that lasts forever. There's no refusing bottles phase that's going to last forever. There's no breastfeeding phase that's going to last forever, or there shouldn't be. If you're still breastfeeding at 18, it is too long.
Too long.
Too long. But every phase also does build on itself. So this goes a little bit back to being present, is just being intentional. Like, we're like, the dishwasher is totally off limits. Ketzel, you're not allowed to touch the dishwasher.
Since she was little.
Yeah, because she could crawl really early.
Yeah, she is an antsy baby, so she wanted to be moving.
And if we had not established that, then right now we would be fighting with her so much more about touching the dishwasher.
Because we leave our dishwasher open to dry. We don't like do the heated dry, so it's open all day long.
And she, every once in a while, will touch it. But she knows she's not supposed to when we tell her no. Like, she knows those things. And if we had decided to not start that discipline until she was a year old, it would be a nightmare. It's the same thing with the bathrooms. Like, we don't let her go into the bathrooms because
just make them stand outside the door. It's the best.
Because we need to pee and like different things like that. And there's also trash cans in the bathroom.
I just didn't want her little fingers touching the toilet and then her sticking them in her mouth. Like, that's just disgusting to me. Again, one bathroom gets cleaned every week. So we have 2 bathrooms. They're not always the cleanest. So she can't be in there. It's gross.
And like, you don't have to be harsh with how you lay the foundation. Like, we're definitely not harsh with her, but just like, consistent. It's necessary. You got to be consistent. And then it makes the next phases so much better. Because she's still upset when we like don't let her go into the bathroom, but she knows she's not allowed to go into the bathroom. Every once in a while, she's like sneaky with me, and I'll be walking around in the house with her, and she's like holding onto my finger, and she'll just like cruise into the bathroom, and I'm talking to Jessica, and I don't even realize that we've gone into the bathroom. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're not supposed to be in here, and pull her out.
She's so tricky.
She is tricky. But if you lay those foundations, it builds and it builds and it builds better. But you can build the other way too, and you can reinforce bad habits, and you can reinforce disobedience essentially. And so even though no phase lasts forever, they do add up. They do build on top of each other. And so don't freak out, because it's not going to be a forever problem. But also be intentional, because you want to address problems early rather than letting them stack up into something that becomes this really major battle in a couple of years from now.
Yeah, and just recognize that, like, you guys are going to have to decide all the time.
Yeah.
Like, is this something we care about? And there's so many things that I think are gray area things.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
That we talk about so often, where we're like, do we care if she does this? Like,
and that's where everyone does things a little differently. It comes back into play, right? I would say there's 3 things that we really pay attention to as far as rules go in our house. So the bathroom thing is an us rule, right? That's a sanity rule for us.
Yeah.
There is no moral, like, X on a kid going into a bathroom, right? Like,
we'll tell you if that's terrible for us during her potty training phase.
Yeah. But like, part of it is, you get older, you get more responsibilities, you get more privileges. Hopefully it'll work out. Yeah. But that's strictly a sanity rule for us. So that's like one of the categories I have. The second one is danger. Like, there are rules that you make because things are dangerous. And so you're not allowed to stick your finger into the outlet. That is just like a non-negotiable, because it's a danger thing, right? You're not allowed to play with knives. You're not allowed to run with scissors. Like, those are rules that are danger rules. And so they are necessary to preserve the life of your child. And then the third one are moral rules. And thankfully, she's not really dealing with those too much right now.
Yeah, she doesn't.
But just
Little
in,
things, but not
yeah.
really big, major existential crisis, moral issues.
Yeah. So just in our home, like those are kind of the three categories that we're using for the rules. And to be able to explain it to a kid, like sanity, you could also say that that's just a family culture thing, you know? And so you just have a rule, like on Tuesday night, it's family game night. Like that's a culture rule of our house. And so, no, you're not allowed to go over to Johnny's house on Tuesday because that's like, this is a cultural rule for our family. There's nothing moral about it. There's nothing danger about it, but this is the way that we have chosen to live as a family. And then there are rules that are like danger, and kids need to know those things. Like you're not allowed to just walk and run through the parking lot without holding on to your parent's hand or a safe adult's hand, because that is a safety thing. And then there are things that are like, you're not allowed to lie because that is a moral thing. And to be able to explain that to a kid, I think is really helpful because you want those rules to be a conversation. You don't just want them to be a dictation, because then they will not be able to reason through what is a reasonable thing and what is an unreasonable thing to be asked to do. Because there are adults out there that have terrible rules and are really dumb, and I don't want my kid obeying them.
Yeah.
Like if they tell my kid that they're not allowed to do something that is not a danger thing, it's not a moral thing, and it might be their cultural thing, but it's for really idiotic reasons, I would want my kid to be able to stand up and say like, no, that's wrong. Like I don't want my kid to be brainwashed into like, you have to obey everything that every single adult says.
Yeah.
Because that ends up being really dangerous because there's a lot of
Super.
adults that are not trustworthy.
Yeah, we don't even, like, Ketzel is very particular about, like, touching. She's just not a very touchy little baby.
Yeah.
And we don't make her go to people. We don't make her kiss people. She won't even kiss us. She
Yeah.
kisses every animal
In her
books. And will not
It's like,
kiss. Yeah, open mouth. Like, it's just not great. But that's something that is really important for us as a family to establish, is like, your physical safety is something that is important to us.
Yeah.
And so you, even at such a young age, like,
you can be like, ouchie, no, ouchie, ouchie.
and like you saying, I don't feel comfortable doing something, to an extent, because, like, you know, she probably doesn't feel comfortable getting her diaper changed every time and things like that. But like, those things are really important, especially when it's related to people outside of us, because the rules are much more strict between parent and child and much more gray between a child and the rest of the world.
Yeah. But I want our kids to be able to reason out what is true instead of just always being like, it's a rote memory thing.
Yeah.
Like, I have to do this because I have to.
I have to listen to an authority figure because they're an adult or they're older than me,
Yeah.
or things like
And
that.
like, and again, like, I want a kid to be able to understand and recognize, like, this is a safety issue right now. Like, if the fire alarm goes off and a teacher or somebody's like, we need to get out of the building right now, I don't want my kid to be like,
No.
but I'm still eating my snack. Like, they need to be able to understand, like, oh, it's a safety thing. That means I have to obey, right? But even having that conversation of like, this is a safety issue, and so you have to do it this way, like, makes it a conversation that they can understand and grow in and reason through,
Yes.
you know?
So if you are in the thick of the newborn stage, just know that you are going to make it. And you might have to make a lot of adjustments in order to make it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that you have to change and do, and many tears are shed in the first year. But it is getting better all the time.
Yeah.
And
And it's been super fun.
So
We've
fun.
laughed so much more.
so much more. We did not realize how much we weren't laughing in comparison to how much we laugh now.
Yeah. So I don't want anyone to think like raising kids is a bummer, but it is hard. It's a lot of joy and it's a lot of trial, all wrapped up in one tiny body.
One tiny, crazy body.
Yeah.
So we hope this was encouraging. We hope that you're able to find some things that kind of help you either navigate through thinking about having kids or being in the newborn stage, or if you have older kids and you don't agree with any of this, don't tell us that. We'll talk to you guys next time.